Coming up on our Finding Better podcast, I've got Nate Turner joining me. Folks, this is so much fun. We're going to have such a great time because we're going to talk about our kids and our families. And in terms of parenthood, how to raise our kids to be intellectually ambitious, globally and culturally competent, and humanitarian driven, meaning becoming a person so much bigger than themselves. I have learned so much. Of course, there's a lot of things that I learned that you're going to learn from Nate that you wish you would have done before, but it's never ever too late. And he grew up in Gary, Indiana, raised a kid who went to Santa Clara University, Carnegie Mellon, and NYU, and he's just an amazing guy. So buckle your seatbelt. You're going to learn a lot. Here we go. Hello, 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 and welcome back to our Finding Better podcast. My name is John Suzuki, and I am your host. And this is where we share real life experiences. We don't share academics, we don't share theories, we certainly don't share opinions. Because an old friend of mine once said, John, I could care less about your opinions, but I'll listen to your experiences all day long. So this is a safe place, right? Where I created this podcast to give you real information. Nobody here wants anything from you. We just want to share our experiences because, sometimes the best path to success is to copy others and understand the journey that others went through. I have with me Nate Turner. Nate Turner is a friend of mine. He's from Indiana. And he and I are going to really, really talk from the heart. And we're going to talk about parenting and giving your kids a really good life. And this is one of those episodes that if you're a parent, great, welcome because both of us are parents. Both Nate and I are parents. I'm a grandparent, and so we've been there and done that. Okay. For those of you who are aspiring parents or know that parenting is in your future, you want to bookmark this episode because we're going to talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Nate is an amazing guy. Nate, thank you again for joining me again
Thank you.
on
Checks
our
in the
Finding
mail.
Better podcast. Yeah,
Checks in the
yeah,
mail. Thank
yeah,
you.
yeah. No, no, none of that. None of that. Just to be clear, full
I know.
transparency. None of
I
that happens
know.
here.
I know. I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
yeah.
I'm kidding.
No, and it is really because that would be antithetical to what I just said, wouldn't
I
it?
know. I know.
Right?
It's
And
yes.
and so yeah. So Nate, what's going on, brother?
Another day in paradise. You know how I
Another day
usually
in
say it.
paradise.
Another day in paradise. Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
That's it. Well, listen, I want to give the mic to you
Okay.
because you have your background and your experiences in raising your son and what you're doing to help others. Yeah, is just amazing to me. It's just amazing to me. You grew up in Gary, Indiana, and folks, if you don't know where Gary, Indiana is, it's in Indiana, and it is like the crime capital of the world. And that's where Nate grew up. And he came out of that. Sorry, Nate, I'm not going to
No, no,
tell
it's
your
all good.
story. You can tell your story, but I
No.
just get excited about sharing who you are because, from where you've come and where you've been, and the priorities that you set on raising your son and where your son is now is just unbelievable. It's truly remarkable. So with that, all right, Nate, a little bit about your story. First of all, what are you doing these days? And then I want to go back a little bit on how you got to the point to what you're doing today. So let's talk about what you're doing today.
Sure. Today I am simply helping parents help their children live the best life possible.
You
That's
know, there, okay, okay. That was now the big question is, all right, dude, how? Yeah,
how.
how?
Yeah.
How do you do that and how have you done it?
So in my mind, the responsibility of any parent is to help our children be great citizens and to be great global citizens. For
Yes.
some parents, that begins and ends in their mind about getting into a great school. So we talk to parents and show parents how to do that. But in the largest sense, what we're hoping to do is to help parents raise children who are intellectually ambitious. They could have great grades, they could have great test scores, but we know a lot of people have great grades and great test scores, who have no social intelligence and are not great people. We want parents to have an opportunity to raise great people. The second part of that, of raising great people, is that raise children who are globally and culturally competent. John, you and I come from different backgrounds, but I feel
Yeah.
as close to you as anyone I've met. Like when we get on here, I say, "Hey, my brother." Like you are my brother. That's the way I feel about it. But I bet, and I'm able to do that, and I think you're able to do that because our perspective of the world is larger than whatever environment we were in. So the ideal is to help families to raise children who have a global and cultural competence, can see their own humanity, but are not so set in seeing their own humanity that they can't see the humanity of others and see the connections. And then the last part of it is we want parents to raise children who care for something greater than themselves, who, in my mind, or in our mind, we call it being humanitarian driven. That we are raising people who are thinking about some of the larger issues, like what is the meaning of life and what am I here for, et cetera, and how do I make a greater contribution to society.
It's remarkable as I was just listening to you because as you and I have talked about, I think that everybody listening, you and me, we all share a common purpose, and that is to make the world better than the day we landed on it.
Correct.
And for me, one of the most important ways, and I started before my kids were born. I started with this that the greatest legacy I can leave behind are my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had that mindset, and I know you have that mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I are both blessed with having kids that are the kinds of people we want to become when we grow up.
Correct.
You and I grow up,
Right.
right? And
Right.
and to me, it's really important. Talk to me, and us, Nate, a little bit about some of the challenges because, one of the things that strikes me is that I don't know, it wasn't too long ago. I was listening to an interview where they were interviewing parents, and this was in an inner city school, and they were talking about values. And one of the parents said, values, that's a school's job to teach that. You
Yeah.
know, so one of the things that I find, and I've experienced, is that part of the challenge is that we live in such a hard world, right? We live in this world where both parents have to work. It's just really, really hard for
Mm-hmm.
people to prioritize their time and energy beyond surviving or what their mental definition of surviving is,
Right.
right? Now, you grew up in Gary, Indiana, right?
Mm-hmm. I
And
did.
that couldn't have been easy. And coming out of that, so what did you do? Because I mean, I can imagine a tough life,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and somehow you set that priority in your mind.
I think the world, in fairness, the world was different. Um,
Uh-huh.
so the world today, for it's very big, right? There's 8 billion plus people. Probably when I was born, there were probably 3 to 4 billion people. So the world is bigger, but the world is also smaller. Um,
Right.
when I was growing up in Gary, there was a real community. So there were my parents, yes, were my parents, but like there's not an exaggeration when you say everybody on the street could grab you and discipline you if you were out of line. So there was a
Yeah.
communal expectation for you that I don't believe exists today. Today,
Yeah. Yeah.
today's very different. People don't you don't know your neighbors generally. You don't talk to your neighbors. You don't have relationships. Parents, when we go to school, my parents told me to get a job and move away. So you move away. I think it's called like brain drain. Your best and brightest who can quote unquote escape, they leave. But in truth, those are the people who should actually stay in the city. Those are the people who should
Yeah.
stay and be a part of the community, but we all leave and go somewhere else. So um, I think it's easier. It may have been easier for me to be a child in Gary than it is today for children to be children, even if they live in wealthy communities.
That is really, really an interesting perspective because, we don't let our kids go out by themselves,
Right.
right?
No.
When you and I were growing up, we would get on our
Right.
bikes and drive for miles to get
Right.
to our friends'
Right.
houses.
Yes.
And
My dad would
but
make me leave the house. Get out my house. Like
yeah,
stop sucking up my oxygen or my air conditioning or my heat. Get out the house. Like, are you serious?
but
Don't
not
come
only
back.
that. Not only that, we wanted to get out of the
We want to get out of
house.
the house. Absolutely.
Right? I mean, we
Right.
wanted to play, and now, the screen time for kids is just crazy. They don't want to go outside. They don't want to play. My
Hmm.
son is a great example. We had to give him a 1 hour limit of screen time a day. And that was really harsh. And it could be his Game Boy, it could
Right.
be his Sony, whatever the hell that thing was called. It could be
Well, right.
TV, it could be his computer, whatever it was, he got 1 hour.
1 hour.
And then he had to figure out what to do with that time that was left, which was most of it.
Hmm.
He had no choice but to go outside and
Right.
and,
Right.
and live, right?
Right.
So you and I grew up in a different time,
Hmm.
but we're in the time that we are now.
That's right.
And like I just said, with the example I gave about my son, we've lived through raising kids. And the fact of the matter is, no generation is like the previous one. It
Hmm.
just isn't,
Hmm.
right? I mean,
Agreed.
look at they're very, very different mindsets. And I'm talking generally,
Hmm.
right? When you talk about the boomers and the millennials and the Gen Zers and all that kind of stuff. And so given that we grew up in a different time, what are the adjustments that you've made that would help my audience understand, okay, so we're not living back in the 70s and 80s.
No,
We're living
no.
today. So what are
Right.
what are you seeing out there as you help the folks that you help?
So, John, I do this thing with young people and with parents, and you've heard me talk about backward design. I don't know if I've ever explained to you this way, but if you could imagine, there's a really big circle on the outside, and on the
Okay.
outside are things I believe all children, maybe all people, should be familiar with.
Okay.
Why do I want them to do that? Because I think that you and I, if we met a young person who knew a lot about a whole lot of stuff, we would be fascinated about, right, about how that young person. You would be talking about, oh my gosh, this person, this young kid was so precocious. Like we would say that. Well, inside that circle is the next circle, which is mastery. And so there are things that we want to master. We want children to master reading, writing, math, science, social intelligence, so forth.
Hmm.
And then at the very center, the most important thing, just to answer your question, is the core. And I think too, which is when our journey is over, who will we be? And that to me is the thing that parents oftentimes forget. I'm raising someone, I birth someone to be what? To be whom? Who do I want them to be at the core of their being?
Whoa. Okay.
Right. Too
You
often
you
we're thinking, go, I'm sorry.
no, yeah, the way you said it earlier was, who do you want them to be at the end of their journey?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That
So when
is
I,
that is such a profound question. Because most of us don't even know
right,
what we
no,
want to be at the end of our
right,
journey,
right,
right?
right.
Let alone us thinking about our kids and someone other than ourselves.
Right. But so when I said, hey, you said, hey, what do you do? Like I said, I help parents help their children have their best life. Because at the end of your life, like that's all you get. When it's over, it's over. And the question that we all have to answer, like, did I live my life to its fullest? What did I live up to my full potential? Well, in my mind, of course, if you can be intellectually ambitious, if you can be globally and culturally competent, if you can care for something greater than yourself, humanitarian driven, you have a better chance than not of living a great life. But if all I'm ever talking about are grades and test scores, or if all I'm ever talking about is acquiring things that you understand when I say this, that rust and moss do destroy, then I'm going to end up with a very different outcome. I'm not interested in, as people might think, I'm not interested in what school my son gets into, any of that stuff. I'm only interested in if it's a place he can go and his intellectual ambition, his curiosity can be piqued and he can grow from that, that he can be an environment for that. But I'm less interested in most people think about just a teen of getting to their dream school, for example, just to
Okay,
get
let's
to a
talk
dream
about
school.
that for a second.
Right.
Okay, I'm looking at you and I'm looking at me and I go, I'm the product of public schools.
Right.
right?
So as
I
am I.
paid for I paid. I'm not smart enough to get a scholarship. Couldn't even come, didn't even think about applying for a
Yeah.
scholarship. And I paid my way through college.
As did I. Right.
And so people look at you and me and they go, "Oh yeah, you're just saying that because you
Right.
can never get yourself or your kids
Right.
through a prestigious university." All right, tell the story.
Right.
Share the
Done it.
story
Right.
of your
Right.
son and yourself. Yes,
Right.
please.
So the point I was making about asking who I want my child to be at the end of their journey is the place where I began. But who do you want your child to be? Okay, well, I would like my child to be able to attend a great school. Why? Because I struggle. I like you, I paid for my college. I went to the best schools that I could afford to go to. I went to the best schools that would accept me given my limited academic ability.
Yeah, yeah, that was the hard. That was the
Right,
worst part
right,
about the
right.
whole thing for
Yeah,
me.
here's reality, right? This is what you. This is as good as it gets. Okay, great. Then I got to say, well, I want better for my child because it should be implicitly the thing every parent says. Hey, how do I do better for this next life? And so I set my sights, or my wife and I set our sights on Harvard. Can we
On
do it
Harvard.
on Harvard?
Harvard.
Right, on
Okay,
Harvard.
so you didn't set your sights on the local best
No,
university.
no, no. I
You
set
shot for
sights
the
on Harvard.
stars.
I shot for the stars, right? I said,
Okay.
here, I'm finishing law school. I don't have a job. I'm at a good school. I'm not at a great school. Why are you not at a great school? Well, because you didn't do great on your LSATs. Well, why didn't you do great on your LSATs? Well, you didn't do great in undergrad. Well, why did you like, so you backtrack and then one day you say, wow, my parents didn't know how to set me up for this, but I'm not mad at them. My mother and father only finished high
Exactly.
school. My
Exactly.
grandparents only finished the fifth grade. I found out, John, recently, all of my grandparents, nobody finished middle school. So,
Wow. Yeah,
so I'm like, okay, so I really can't be mad. There's no history. There's no
that's right.
pathway in my life for that. So I'm not mad at them. But now I know. So what should I shoot for? Okay,
Okay,
we're gonna shoot.
okay, as you're so what should you cheer for, right?
Mhm.
So this is kind of a spoiler alert. You didn't let those past quote unquote limitations hold you back, right?
No,
You didn't.
right,
You didn't.
right, no.
Okay, so what'd you do? Sorry, go.
So that's okay. So we write Harvard. I've got this woman, and she tells us she's pregnant, and I'm like, okay, great, but your husband is unemployed, and right, this is a hard thing for me to accept because a lot of my childhood, my father was unemployed. So here I am. Go ahead.
So sorry. I just
No,
want
no,
to make
you're
sure
fine.
I'm clear with this,
Yes,
right? You're unemployed,
yes,
your wife is pregnant with your son,
that's correct.
and you're calling Harvard
I'm real. Yes,
on behalf of this human being that hasn't been born yet
that is correct. Don't
as
know.
an
Don't
unemployed dad.
as an unemployed dad. Don't know if I'm
You're
having
crazy. That's nuts.
but I don't have a male. I don't know if I'm having male or female. I know she's pregnant. And
Right.
I'm like, okay, I am in a bad position. I have
Yep.
tried my life to be better than my father. I've critiqued and criticized my father for his inability to keep a job and do all these things. And
Or
guess
whatever.
what?
Yep.
I am now unemployed. I am now my father. Like the worst thing that I could have imagined, I'm now my father. But I have to ask myself, well, how am I here? Well, Nate, let's look back to the beginning. What did your parents not know how to do? Okay, well, let's write Harvard. Let's get an application and let's see what we find out from the application. So we write Harvard. That was one of the days when you had to write. Remember, you would tear off the little thing and you would send it off and
Yeah,
little postal, right?
none
Right.
of
You
this
don't understand
iPhone
that, right?
stuff.
Right. None of
Yeah.
that. So we get an application and we look at the application and read through it, and it dawns on us that there are three things that we need to do to get this child into Harvard. But of course, the first one is to have someone who's academically prepared for Harvard, a great test scores, great grades. Okay, but Harvard delineates two other more important things, at least to us. One was that they said this is 1994. We want world citizens. Wow. Okay. No, well, what does that mean? Oh, well, in 1994, that meant, hey, we should start making preparations for this child to learn at least one more language. And then the last part said, we want students who um, care for something bigger than themselves. And so it's like, okay. Well, I had worked on my master's in theology. So I figured I understand that part. That's related to my relationship with the creator and my my neighbors. So I can help a child with that part. So we're like, all right, well, we're going to do everything from this henceforth is going to be based on those three elements. We're going to,
So go ahead.
yes. No, so we're going to,
Repeat those three.
now we call them intellectual ambition, global and cultural competency, and humanitarian driven or humanitarian drive. So those are the three things we were doing. Okay, everything we're going to do from here on out is going to be, can we raise a child who's intellectually ambitious, someone who is globally and culturally competent, someone who cares for something greater than himself. And that was it. Everything we did was based on those three
You know
elements.
that is amazing because I I think I speak for the vast majority of people out there. If I saw that, I go, "Are you freaking kidding me?" And that thing would have gone into the trash can. And I would have just been, "What the hell are they talking about?" Because that's not my perspective. That's not
Right,
the perspective that I grew up with,
right.
right? It'd be like, "Yeah, right, whatever." And yet you from Gary, Indiana, looked at that and said, "Okay, let's do that." And it sounds like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like you decided to use that as your blueprint
Yep. It was
moving forward with this person who hasn't entered our world yet,
nope, nope. That's right.
and that's what you were going to do. All right.
Yep, yep.
That of itself is incredible,
Yeah.
Nate. You-
Like there's some things that happened that were very fortuitous. I worked for Macmillan McGraw here at School Publishing while I was in law school. They gave me a whole bunch of books, and surprisingly, some of the books they gave me was early childhood development. I had no idea why they gave me these books. They also gave me language tapes. So I'm like, I don't know why they gave me language tapes. I don't know why they gave me books on early childhood development. But one of the books they gave me was written by a guy named Glenn Dolman. And Glenn Dolman wrote a series of books, and one of them was How to Give Your Baby Encyclopedic Knowledge. And I was like, a baby? How do you? And I started to read through it, and I was like,
What?
wow, yes. In the
Okay.
70s, John, Mr. Dolman, no longer with us, was coaching parents to help children with brain injuries learn to read and do sophisticated math problems by 18 months. And I said, well, hold on a second.
Wait, by 18 months old?
18 months old, those kids with brain injuries were reading and they were doing sophisticated math problems. And when I say sophisticated, I don't mean like 2 + 2 is 4. I mean like 33 times 647 is those kids were doing. Like,
Okay.
and
Please
so I
go
was like,
on.
and so he had a series of books, how to teach math to your baby, how to teach a baby to read, a whole series of how to do something for babies. And I started reading his books and thought, well, this is phenomenal. And then I read a book, I believe, called How to Bring Out the Genius in Black Children or something like that. But they were all geared to things you could do with babies. And so I'm like, okay, well,
And
Latanya,
this was not black babies or white babies or
no,
Indian babies or
it was
Japanese
babies
babies
with brain injuries. He was doing
with
this with babies with
brain
brain injuries.
injuries.
Yes,
With
yes,
brain injuries.
with
These are
brain injuries.
18-month-old.
Yes. If you
Okay, sorry,
YouTube it,
go.
if you went on YouTube, you could find Glenn Dolman. He was on Oprah once, and
Glenn
I
Doman.
believe I heard him talking on Oprah about the work that he was doing. And so I was like, okay, to the best of our knowledge, this thing growing around in your abdomen does not have a brain injury. And so, well, what should we be doing while the baby's in the womb? Well, the books sort of said, you've heard read and play music and so forth. So we did those things. Talk to the baby, let the baby hear your voice, all that
Right.
stuff.
Hmm.
When he was before he was born, thinking about the global and cultural competency piece of it, thinking about the humanitarian piece, like, well, you know what? Because I've been moved to be a parent by the movie Lion King. You and I've talked about this before,
Lion King.
the Lion King. But
Mufasa. Yep.
there's the opening scene, and I told everyone that in the opening scene, uh, Rafiki holds Simba out over the village for everyone to see.
Yep.
And in seeing that, what I understood, John, was that I needed to raise a child who could be worthy of being king and raise a child who understood his responsibility to the village. And so, thus, I needed to have a village who was willing to participate in his naming and caring for him. So, had I known you, I'm absolutely positive about this. You would have gotten a letter from Latanya and I, and it would have said, "Hey, John, we're expecting a child. We don't know what we're having, boy or girl, but here are 10 names we're thinking about for male names. Here are 10 female names. We've already given the child a different last name than us because we want a special message to be given to the child about who they are. But we'd like you to come over. We're not going to name the baby for 8 days. And we want you to come over and spend as much time as you want to spend in the child's presence. And we want you to help us figure out what this child should be named."
Now, you again, I keep going back to your
Yes.
humble beginnings.
Right.
And yet here you are, years later, with a blueprint from Gary, Indiana, with a blueprint to raise your child based on Harvard acceptance criteria.
Correct.
And you're starting this process before the baby
In
is
in
born
utero. Yes. Yes.
in utero.
Mhm.
And yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I got it. Go.
Yeah, yeah. So desperate times, desperate times call for desperate measures. So I have the language tapes, I have the books. My our son is born. We don't have a name for him. The hospital, of course, they kick you out after 36 hours. So they say, "Hey, what's the child's name?" So we can put it on the birth certificate. We said that he doesn't have a name. They put on his original birth certificate, it says Baby Boy Turner. He does not have a name. So we wait for 8 days. Family members come over. We get a chance to spend time with him. I'm thinking about naming him Malik. That's what I want to name him. But he's not a Malik. He's not Malik. I watch him be born. He doesn't cry. He's regal in his, to me, in his appearance. When he gets here, he's got a cone head. The doctors have to fix that. But he's regal in that he doesn't cry. He's like, "I'm here. Y'all, I'm here." Okay. And so he ends up being Naeem, and Naeem is benevolent. And he ends up being Kahari. Kahari is Swahili for kingly. So he's the benevolent king. And so everything about his life at that point is driven around this core. Who are you going to be at your core? Naeem, everywhere you go, we remind you, who are you? I know I'm the benevolent king. What does it mean to be benevolent? It means to be good. What does it mean to be a king? It means to be responsible for other people. It's not that people are responsible for you. Like, you have a kingdom, but that doesn't mean you're the lord over people. Like, he would, like that. We would talk about that all the time. That became part of his core identity.
You know, what strikes me is that your example, a big part of who kids become, uh, the old saying, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree,
Yes.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And what you're doing is you're giving an example on the extreme far end of the opposite spectrum of where most people think, right? And because you're thinking about the end game. You're okay. So my kids are named Michael and Kristen. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhat biblical names.
Yes. Yeah.
And uh, but certainly not benevolent king. So as you are okay, so he's got this identity, and I mention this because most people haven't called their kids, named their kids benevolent king. So that road's been crossed. So you
Well,
know,
it means it. His name is Naeem Kahari Turner hyphen Bandele. So his last name is Yoruba. It's not like I was going to throw my name away, and my mother encouraged me not to do it. So he has a hyphenated last name, but his last name is not my name. It's not any name that is a part of any family member that I know of. It's a name from the the place that I'm probably from, which is Nigeria, and it is part of the Yoruba tribe, and it means born away from home. So his full name, like the meaning of his name, is he is a benevolent king, despite being born from slavery. I'm an ancestor of descendant of slaves, who was born away from home. So he is a benevolent king, despite being born from slavery and away from home.
okay. So every myself and everybody listening has screwed that part of it
Right,
up with
right.
our kids.
No, no,
Okay. So
no.
so moving
Right.
moving forward,
Yes.
I want to get to a punchline.
Sure.
Okay,
Okay.
because I said earlier on, people look at you and me and they go, yeah, right. You want to send your kids to Harvard. Yeah. Um, I want you to give the punchline of where he went to college, and then I want you
Okay.
to come back. So just say,
Sure.
where did he go to college?
He went to undergrad at Santa Clara. He went for his PhD at Carnegie Mellon, and he's at NYU for his MBA.
So the kid's a loser. He didn't make it to Harvard.
He didn't. He didn't. He didn't go to Harvard. He didn't go
Oh
to Harvard.
my God.
He didn't. He didn't
Okay.
even. He never even applied to Harvard.
No kidding.
No,
Okay.
no. Well,
Okay.
Harvard's in Boston, and Boston is cold, and he did not intend to go anywhere for undergrad. He's like, I'm not going anywhere where it's
Yeah, well,
cold.
Santa Clara
So
is pretty nice. Santa
Santa
Clara
Clara
is
is
pretty nice. My daughter went to Santa Clara,
okay.
and yeah, that's a beautiful, beautiful university. All right, let's go back. So now,
Top 15 school for return on investment. Top 15 school for annual salary after 10 years.
okay,
People don't know that. Yep.
I
It's
didn't know
top
that either.
15. Yeah. See there.
Okay, there you
Yep.
go. Yeah. This person is born,
Mm-hmm.
and
There's no
you
name
have your
guy.
blueprint, and
Right.
so as you're going through, what you know, one of the things I want to talk about is, you very early on, I mean, you prioritize this human being in
Mm-hmm.
your life. And it's tough, I mean, growing up and or not growing up, but living in the world that we live in, and having the financial pressures and the social pressures and all that kind of stuff. It's tough to raise kids,
Mm-hmm.
and it's tough to have the energy, and it's tough to create that priority, because I think that just anecdotally, based on my personal experience looking at people, work takes priority
Yeah.
only because it's a survival mechanism.
Right.
So you're now in a position where you're holding this human being in your arms,
Mm-hmm.
and you still have this blueprint.
Yes.
What do you do?
So we take so here's the first thing we like, okay, well, the intellectual ambition part, we have to figure that out. So
And
the
this is
book,
what you teach people, right?
yes. So
These are the
here's the
things that you're
right.
teaching people.
Yes,
Yep.
sir. So here's the things. Okay, well, what does the book suggest? Well, first thing, if he's going to get to Harvard, he's got to be able to read as soon as possible. He got to be able to count as soon as possible. There are these academic things. There's these mastery things that he has to master. There's familiarity things. So the more we can introduce him to, the better. All right. So how do we do that? How do we get him to read as soon as possible? Okay. So we in the book, Glenn Dolman explains, hey, take big, huge picture books and whatever's on the book while the baby is laying, because the baby ain't nowhere to go, while the baby is laying, looking up, describe everything on that in the picture book. So, John, you have a lion behind you. So I would say, as an example, hey, this is the lion. It's spelled Lion, and the lion makes it sound right. So you would do all of that, and when the child's and the lion's fur is caramel colored, caramel, Caramel, or it could be spelled Carmel, Caramel. So you would do all that, and when the child looks like they were losing attention, you would change the picture to another photo, and you would say, "Hey, this is a fire engine. It's red. It makes this sound." And so we would just do those kind of things repeatedly. When you would come in his room, instead of hearing nursery rhymes, you would hear the language tapes playing. So you might come in the room and hear, Hola. Hola means hello. ¿Cómo está? Beanie too. You would hear that. You might hear Guten Morgen. You hear some German one day. Like we just would play the language tapes. Why? Because I read somewhere that if you start introducing a child's brain to languages like a sponge, it absorbs some of the nuances of the ability to speak the language. And when they finally are able to learn the language, it becomes an easier transition for them because the neuroplasticity has allowed them to embrace some of the elements of the language that most of us can't learn because we get too old and our brains become a little more challenging to learn the language. But as an infant, they can pick all up. So we just played all the languages, French and Spanish and German and Portuguese, so whatever tapes we had, we played the tapes. Our friends would come over the house and they were like, "What are y'all doing now? Like y'all are weird." Like, okay, whatever. So that's what we did. We did those things until I think he was 2 months and he said his first words. And I remember calling my mother distinctly because we talk on Sundays, and she said, I said, "Hey, Naeem spoke today," and she says, "What did he say?" I said, "He said, Daddy," and she said, "No, it didn't. He just sounded like it just sounded like he said it." And I said, "Well, it just sounded like you said something." So right, so I think he spoke. If you spoke, so did he. But by the time he was 10 months, he was speaking in full sentences. But we just continued to use that process.
And at what point did you hear him speak a different language?
So it's interesting. It's a good question. So I think he was about one, and he had a daycare. We would send him to a daycare, and it was called I can't remember some learning center, but it doesn't matter. The young lady who took care of him, her name was Daisy, and Daisy was Latina. And so one day when we were picking him up, she says, "Mr. Turner, does my baby, because she would call Naeem her baby, does my baby know Spanish?" And I was like, "I don't know." She said, I said, "Why?" She said, "Because he spoke Spanish to me today." Because she was speaking like,
Whoa.
and I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah." I was like, "All right." So
You
then
know,
now that gives us impetus to find a place where he can actually go and learn the language on a regular basis.
wow. Okay. So, all right. This is really great.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
Because I'm gonna make sure my daughter listens to this episode
All right.
because she's
Got
got a 6-year-old, a 5-year-old, and an 8-month-old. And this is amazing. Um, for me and my daughter, sorry, trains left the station, baby. Right.
it.
And so I'm sure
Yeah,
there's a lot
me
of
too,
people
John. Me
feeling
too.
feeling well, no, no, you made the train.
but
You
I
laid the
can't.
tracks.
But I can't speak any other languages. So
Yeah.
whether or not I do well in English is
But
questionable.
you see that
Right.
that's part of my point
Right.
is that you you said that some of your friends came over and said, "What y'all doing?
Right.
What are you
Right.
nuts?"
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason why you are so fascinating to me is because and I'm sorry for my bias. I'm sorry for just full transparency. My first job, my first legitimate job was at a golf course in South Central Los Angeles.
Okay.
And so I know the black community a lot more than a lot of people do. But when people, eh, I'm just going to say it, when people don't think of college success and they don't think of black people. They think of a
Mm.
lot of other things,
Right. Right.
right?
And that's true.
And so
Sports, entertainment. Yeah.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll be the first to tell you that
Right.
Japanese guys suck in basketball in the NBA. It just
Right.
ain't gonna happen, right? But But here you are, and especially with your background, and you're just breaking through all this stuff. And I mean, you're doing things that nobody does. And so for a lot of us, as we listen to you, we're going, okay, my kids are 16, my kids are 15, my kids are 7. You're still talking at the age of 2. Can you fast forward a little bit without
Sure.
fast forwarding too much
Sure.
about high school? Because then high school, that's kind of a fork in the road of, first of all, go to high school,
Mm-hmm.
and secondly, what you're going to do and the path that you took in your son going to college.
So yeah. So the interesting thing is because we got such an early start, and things would just continue not what's the word I want to use? It's snowball in a good way.
Yeah, no,
We
totally,
would we would
totally.
find out, well, man, like we got him tested at two, his vocabulary, and it exceeded that of a 9-year-old. And we're like, what? How? Like you're now he's reading. You're like, well, but of course, because remember where you started.
It's working.
And so, right,
Yep.
so it's working. So you just keep on doing the same thing. So you say high school, where he starts high school is a seventh grade.
Okay, so I don't want to talk about your son at this point.
That's fine.
Okay, I want to talk about regular seventh graders. Okay,
Okay,
because
right.
because most of us don't have the
No, is that right?
benefit
Right of
of
that.
having started before they were born, right?
So
Now
right,
we're here. Yeah.
right.
What do
So
you
if
tell
you're
people?
if you're a seventh grader and your parents are saying, okay, now what? My question is always going to be the same. If the world were perfect, then what? What do you want for your child? What are your most audacious hopes and dreams for your children? My belief, John, is that every parent, I won't say every, shouldn't use absolute. The overabundance, the propensity of parents is to love their children to death. But then somewhere along the line, parents don't have a real focus about what they want for their children's lives. And then everything else starts to take priority other than their children. I never lost what I wanted to happen for my child. So I asked parents that if the world were perfect, then what? What do you want for your child? What would be the greatest regret you would have about your child today? You got a seventh grader. What do you want to happen? Well, I want my child to go to college. You'll get these kind of um, answers that they're not specific. I want my child to go to college. I said, well, where? What college? Community college? 4-year college? Private college? Liberal arts college? Religious institution? Ivy League institution? Where do you want your child to go? Oh, haven't thought about that. Okay, well, I need you to know exactly where you want them to go because I can't help you to get there, and you can't help your child without a destination. You don't, if I
That's
ask you, you want to go to dinner, you just don't say wherever. You tell me where you want to go, and then we go to that location. So let's have the same specificity we have for a meal for our child's life.
okay. So what I just heard you say is brilliant. And what I just heard you say is this. No matter what stage of your life your child is at, it's never too late
Never
to
too late.
start working on that end goal,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Of what you want and that specificity. Again, it kind of goes back to goal setting, but
Mm-hmm.
for your kids. But
Mm-hmm.
this is more important because it's for your offspring. It's for your family.
Right.
And so whether your child is in first grade, sixth grade, ninth grade, 18th grade, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
um, uh, moving forward and helping them, what do you want for your child?
Right.
What do you want for your child to be at the end of the journey? So you asked that question before your child was born,
Right.
but it's never too late to ask that question.
Nope.
And the other thing that you did was you kept the answer to that question in front of you for
Yes.
decades,
You're right.
right?
Correct. That's correct.
And you kept working towards that. So I think the message that I'm getting from you is it's never too late to set those sights of
Right.
what what and if your child's in high school, do it with the child.
Correct.
I would
Right.
imagine, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you want the end of your journey to look like? What do you want to be? Who do you
Right.
want to be? It's never too late to ask that question. It's never too late to set that answer.
Yeah.
And it's never too late to commit to it. Is that
Yeah.
right?
That's right. So I think it's the two things. When you have small children, you have grandchildren. You have small children, and if you ask them about what they want to be, you could just ask them the question, and if they haven't been tampered by us, they will come up with the most ingenious ideas. I'm going to the
Totally.
moon today, and how you getting there? Well, I'm gonna fuel my bicycle with such and such, and I'm gonna go to the moon and the cheese, and I'm gonna eat cheese. Like they'll have all this outlandish stuff, and what they're doing is they're dreaming. What they're doing is you and I remember watching the Jetsons and thinking somebody wrote this cartoon about flying cars and robots that
And
clean up your
microwave
house
ovens.
and
Yeah.
microwave, right? And
Yeah.
then you look one day, or Star Trek, somebody's dreaming about how to communicate and tell. You're like, well, somebody as an adult was still dreaming. And thus, those things became, in many cases, our reality. So the ideal is, can we just still dream? Can I get parents to dream of what they want? Now, once you can tell me where you want to go, like a GPS, you can say, all right, well, how much fuel do we need? What kind of vehicle are we in? Now we can start assessing what kind of school is your child in? What kind of grades have they had to this point? What do their test scores indicate? Hey, there's some things we can do to measure their test scores as a third grader to tell you what college or university they're on track for right now. So there are things like, can you pay for school, or do we need to be thinking about scholarships, and if so, what kinds of schools should we be visiting, all that kind of stuff. But those things are after you have finally decided what it is you want for your child.
And yeah, that is after you've done the
Yeah,
groundwork.
right. You have
That's
to do that.
after you've taken this land that's got rocks and boulders and all kinds of crap on
Right,
it.
right,
And then
right.
you've cleared that land, and now you're and now you're in the space where you've cleared the land to start growing stuff, right? But you got to
Hmm.
clear that land, and you got to build that vision.
Yeah, absolutely. That has it all begins there. I know I can't or anyone else can't help you if you don't have that greater vision for what you want for your child's life, which is why I said for me, it's a lot more than about grades and test scores or what college you attend.
Yeah, and the thing that's brilliant about what you just said is that, a child might say they're an astronaut. But if you raise them and you help them build and you help them build a path, a roadmap that includes intellectual curiosity, that includes being a global citizen, that includes becoming something bigger than yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what your son did,
Right,
and or you did with your son.
right.
And if you build that, and if you help them understand, even if they're in high school, you help them understand that process. I gotta believe that 10 years down the road, if they are now intellectually curious, if there's those other two things,
Mm-hmm.
dreaming bigger than themselves and a world citizen, that they can choose to be whatever the hell they want to be,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And or they can become what they dreamed of when they were 3 years old.
Absolutely. They at least have a process to do it. They're like, okay, I know how to do it. Everything starts with imagining that thing being a reality. When you again, you and I talk, I know like I will make references to things that are spiritually based, but as a person thinking in their heart, so are they. I remind people that the quote says, as
Oof.
you think in your heart, not in your head, as you
Right.
think in your heart. So in your heart are your most audacious dreams, your what you where you your heart is where you emote. All right, in my heart, I love this kid to death. Now, what do I want for this child? If I get out of my head and stop putting up all these artificial obstacles and barriers, what in my heart do I want for this child? The joy that I see when this baby comes into existence. What did I want then? What did I want in that moment? I wanted everything for him. I wanted him to have a chance to do anything and everything. So now what changed? Did it change because he's 16 now? Did it change because she's 13 now? Does it change because he's 25 or she's 28 or she's 42? No. At that moment, I wanted that. Why would I ever change? Why would I ever want anything different than what I wanted in the very moment when I first saw that baby come into existence?
You know, I coined a phrase that says, "We've gotten so smart, we've forgotten our heart."
Mm.
And I come from 40 years in technology, right? Started in the days of punch cards
Yeah.
in technology. So the world has changed a lot since then. But we've gotten so, especially in the age of artificial intelligence, right? Yeah, we've forgotten our heart, and we have to. I've said for the last 10 years, as I have done lots and lots of speaking, that we are going to experience a renaissance of the heart. And I think it's starting to happen. And I think AI is forcing it. Is
Mm.
forcing it. And because the one thing that AI cannot replace is our humanity. It
That's true.
can't,
No.
right? And so it can replace a lot of things. But folks, we're going to talk a lot about this in the future about heart and bring a little bit more heart back into your life,
Mm.
because at the end of the journey, that's all that's left. That's all that's left. Nate, so what do you do? What do you do for folks who are out there? And I for me, I wish we were having this conversation when my daughter was in high school.
Right.
Um, Actually, I wish we were having this conversation before my son and daughter were born, but that's beside the
That's
point.
right, right.
What do you do? What do you do? And again, it's just amazing to me uh, from once you've come, right? I mean, you started in Gary, you've experienced it, you've been through it. Your son went to Carnegie Mellon, and he went to Santa Clara University and NYU. I mean, holy cow, right? So you've been there, done
Yeah,
that. What's
yeah.
that?
I was gonna
What's
say,
this mean?
and they didn't, and zero. I didn't pay for them. That's the other part. Like I didn't pay for them.
You didn't
I
pay
paid a
for any
little
of
for
it.
Santa Clara because
Okay.
well, but
Yeah,
I didn't
Santa
pay for
Clara
any.
sucks that way. But anyway,
I didn't pay for any. I no, I didn't pay for any other place. He had other options, but he wanted to go to Santa Clara, and so like, all right,
yeah,
whatever,
yeah.
go there.
So what do you do? What do you do? What do you do to help people? Folks who are in that stage, and I don't care if they're thinking about when the baby is it, when the baby's
Right,
not in
right,
utero,
right.
or if they're 16 years old. What do you do for folks?
Typically, what people ask me to do is to help them figure out how to get their child to college.
Yeah.
That's what they do. Um, uh, a quick short story. Last weekend, I was in Vegas. I went to see my favorite group of all time, which is Chicago. And James
Oh,
Pank,
nice.
right? I'm old, right? James Panko, the trombonist, came to the mic and he said, "Hey, 58 years ago we started this. What you all probably don't know is that nobody wanted to hear our music when we started. Nobody wanted to hear horns. We were mostly a cover band and we played R&B music and we played in small venues. And I thought, so here's my answer. What I would like to do, but nobody wants to hear that, right? Because I'm playing horns. Is what I like to do is encourage parents to understand how to be engaged with child rearing, not just as we do with Lamaze, which is childbirth. Lamaze teaches you how to eat ice cubes, but once the child
Yeah,
is
that's
born,
right.
I would like to help parents create their own manual so that people can stop saying, well, there's no manual for it. I think that's absolutely ludicrous for us to be
Oh, wow.
in
Yeah.
2025 to say there's no manual. Like we're still saying that. I think that's egregious. So that's what I would like to do. But that's the horns and trombones nobody wants to hear. The music they want to hear is how do you get my kid to a dream college? So in many ways, that's what I end up doing. I end up helping families help their children not get to a dream college because I think dream college is often turned into a nightmare. The ideal is to get them to the best fit college
For Okay, good. I was about to say for them.
for the
And
child,
so you
not
said,
for
so you said before I could say that, you said
yes,
best fit.
best fit. Right,
And that is so
right,
important. Yeah, yeah, so important.
right.
You know, the uh this has been amazing. And I love, I mean, for me, the headline for what you do is you help build the manual, that everybody says doesn't exist. And you're
Right,
absolutely right.
right,
You're
right,
absolutely right. Everybody says there's no manual in raising kids. Well, you know what? If there isn't one, build it.
right, right.
Build it.
Absolutely. Right.
And not only that, you need to customize it. You got to customize
Absolutely.
it based on your dreams. And
Absolutely.
and folks, the thing is that a lot of people, excuse me, a lot of people have forgotten how to dream. And so if you've forgotten how to dream for yourself, dream for your children. Dream for your children, right?
Yes.
I
Yes.
mean, there in a lot of ways, Nate, you and I see so many incredible opportunities today that weren't available to us,
That's
right?
right.
And a
Hmm.
lot of people go, well, the world was better back when you grew up. Well, you know what? In some ways
Right.
yes, in some ways
That's why
no,
no.
but it
Right.
is it is what it is.
We got what we got. Right. We have what
We
we have.
got what we got, you
Yep.
know? And so, Nate, how do people? Okay, do you have anything else you want to share?
Nope, nope. I only want to share what you asked me to share. So no, but that's it. I mean, really, it's just a backward design process. It's two things. We look to help your children become intellectually ambitious, globally and culturally competent, humanitarian driven. Why? Because we want your children to do to do things. One, be the best possible citizen, global citizen that they can become, because the world is smaller than it's ever been. And you might have opportunities to do stuff outside the country. So that's like the life's buffet table. Some of us are prepared to do more than just eat at the end of the table that I ate from, which was the bologna and cheese and peanut butter and jelly. Some people can go down here, have filet mignon, and have all this other stuff. You may not like filet mignon, but if all you've ever known is peanut butter and jelly, you've never tasted. My ideal is to give children an opportunity to choose whatever they want to do from life's buffet. And then, like I said, then we show them how to do that by making sure we build children so that children have those three rings, that there's familiar or jack of all trade, that they master certain things that we know they're going to need to be successful. People talk about future occupations. We can't tell what's coming in the future. No, we don't. But you know what we know for sure? We know that math and science, since the history of the world has been in existence, has depended on people who do math and science at the highest level. So let's make sure young people can do math and science. And we also know, you mentioned about connecting at the heart, that we raise children who are emotionally connected at the heart with other people. And then, like, the last part is this, is at the core. And it may seem morbid, but you ask people, if the world were over, if your child's life ended today, what is it that you want the world to know or say about your child? Because whatever it is, you can't do it when they're gone.
Yeah,
You can only
that's
make
right.
that happen while they're here.
That is amazing. That is amazing. Okay, last punchline.
Yes.
Your son went to all these prestigious universities. He went through basically at zero cost because
Mm-hmm.
he got scholarships. What is he doing today?
Well, today's finishing his last semester at NYU, and last May he started an energy consulting company called Latimer Enterprises. And I don't want to say I'm proud. I'm grateful to say that he named his company in tribute to Lewis Latimer, who was the African American self-taught engineer who created the filament for the light bulb to help Thomas Edison, who also was the draftsman for Alexander Graham Bell for the phone.
Okay, so he's a loser.
He's a
Got it.
loser. He's a loser.
That is
This
amazing.
is good.
Listen, everybody, if for more information on Nate and the things that he does, and by the way, Nate's the first and only person I have invited back to Finding Better to talk with you about the things that he does. I've always said that we're not here to sell anything. We're still not here to sell
We're not
anything.
so.
But this is a man that I wanted to introduce you to, in case you're in a situation where you'd like to talk with him, and get some of his coaching. In this podcast, he's already given you coaching, right? We've talked about a number of things that you can implement immediately, including having language tapes going on, having your baby before they can even crawl, reading books and describing that lion back there. Unbelievable, Nate. Unbelievable. So for now, well, actually, you can go to johnsuzuki.com and we will have information in the resources section on how to reach Nate. But for the time being, Nate, is there any place people can go to learn about you, learn about what you do?
Like everybody have a website, which is,
Okay,
NathanielAturner.com,
perfect.
NathanielAturner.
Okay,
So,
NathanielAturner.com.
yeah.
And you don't spell Nathaniel weird, like with Z's and X's or
No,
anything like
no,
that.
no, no.
So that's
Old
good.
fashioned way.
NathanielAturner.com. Nate, this is you are amazing. You are amazing, and what you've done, and you didn't let your circumstances that you were born and blessed with as a young person hold you back, and you've created something incredible, and you're helping a lot of people,
John,
and
can I
you've
say
already,
this?
uh-huh.
Can I say this before we go?
Yeah, of course,
So, John, I am only as good as the people that I meet,
you got that right.
and you are like what I'm talking about. I wish, you say, hey, I wish this, that, or the other. I know it's going to happen because my son has already asked me this. He said, when are we going to San Diego to meet Mr. Suzuki?
Oh my God.
So
Serious? Oh,
so
I'm honored.
absolutely. So your newest nephew and I are going to come to San Diego to meet with you because he
I
wants
can't
to
wait.
meet you.
Oh my gosh.
That's what I'm saying. I'm only as good as the people that I meet, and those people graciously love me for no reason, and then love my son and pour into his life for no reason. And I think that like that's the biggest lesson that I would ask parents to understand, that if you avail yourself by being willing to help other people will help you and help your children in ways that you could not have ever imagined. Naim has Jewish grandparents, Stuart and Janine Green. They're not biologically connected to me, but when I said, "Hey, I need to figure out a way to give my son some way to separate his childhood from manhood," we talked about a bar mitzvah, and I said, "Well, can I get one for a black kid who's not Jewish?" And we came up with the name. We called it a black mitzvah, and they helped me figure out how to give him a ceremony to recognize his manhood in the same way that the Jewish tradition does. Like these are real
Whoa.
truths. Kim, you like I meet people who pour into my life, and I pour into his life, and so Uncle John, nephew Naeem, and I are coming out to visit.
I love it. I love it. And I'll end with this. I'll come up with a rhyme, but it starts with when you open your heart. And I'll just say this: when you open your heart, amazing things happen, folks. Amazing things happen, and it's really important. We've grown up in a place where we're defensive, we're suspicious, we're hateful. We've closed our hearts. And what Nate just talked about is when you open your heart, yeah, sure. If you're not careful, bad stuff can come in. But if you're protecting yourself and protecting your heart, it's just amazing what can happen.
Absolutely.
Um, Nate, this has been amazing. Thank you so much
No,
for
thank you
being willing to come
as
back on. I
always.
love you. God bless you. And all of you out there, I know something in this conversation resonated with you. Please share this. Please subscribe. And yeah, amazing, amazing. Nate,
Thank you,
thank you
my brother.
again.
Appreciate you. Love you too, man.
Likewise. And folks, thanks for joining us. See you next time.